What's up, guys? I'm gonna try to make this one super quick. Apologize for the noise in the background. That's a fan. It's getting a little hot around here, and yeah, I don't want to turn it off right now. But you're gonna have to deal with that. But I'm gonna make this one real quick. Something that I see a lot happening in society is the push to be alone, right? The push for men and women to be alone. And if you really think about the core of what this is, it's division. And the reason why it's division is because, people, or I should say entities, evil entities, have a vested interest in breaking up families. I wouldn't say that red pill MGTOW slash, red pill slash MGTOW is on the same tier or same level as feminism. I've always felt that red pill MGTOW is a reaction to modern feminism, which is divisive in nature. Why is modern feminism divisive in nature? Because it attacks masculinity. Men supposedly are supposed to be the leaders of the family. Again, if you listen to my channel, you'll know that I'm somewhat duplicitous on that because I don't like the concept of submission per se. And so you might go ahead and say, oh, I'm not traditional. Maybe. I don't know. But I just never relished in that. I've always felt like a marriage should be an equal partnership, however that looks out. Or, excuse me, however that works out. But yes, there's different roles in marriages. Men are masculine, women are feminine. And I think a lot of the issues that we face today are a distortion of that. Whatever evil entity exists is trying to distort that, trying to distort masculinity, trying to distort femininity in order to create confusion, in order to create division, in order to remove traditional marriage. Really, marriage is beautiful. Marriage is something that should be unadulterated, unmessed with, right? It's something that should be sacred. Unfortunately, in the red pill, this thought of being alone has crept in. Unfortunately, and it's a reaction. I understand that it's a reaction. It's a reaction to what's going on in modern society, which is that divorce is prevalent. Women are running amok and taking advantage of men for their money, taking them to divorce court, and it's horrible. And I get it, 100%, I get it. But I think that marriage should still be held in honor. I've thought a lot about it in the past and thought, like, well, maybe it's better to just not sign the paperwork, and in your eyes and in the eyes of God, you can consider yourselves married. But then you got things like common law marriage, or if you're living with somebody for a certain amount of time, then they just hit you, and the state comes in. And if there's any way you could circumvent that by just not signing the papers or not telling anyone, moving in together and just keeping it all low key, maybe, I don't know. But I can tell you it's messed up, and I can tell you that it is a beautiful thing to be married. It's a beautiful thing to have a family and have a relationship. The problem is that there's so many broken people in the world now. There's so many broken homes, so many divorces, so much problems when it comes to relationships, that people are looking at that and going, dang, I don't want any part of that, particularly men, because we're the ones a lot of times who take the brunt of it, and we're the ones that get screwed over a lot of times. And men are seeing other men getting screwed over, and they're like, I don't want no parts of that, which I totally understand. But at the same time, I do believe that it's family is a beautiful thing if you really can experience it, if you're around it, and the joy and the love that comes from being in a big family, or a family period, but a big family. I think what people miss and what people overlook in this generation that we're living in is they forgot. It's not, I wouldn't even use the term family values. It's just that when you're in a family, the love there, right? People have forgotten that. People have forgotten somehow, and probably it's just because they're detached from it. They're disassociated with it. They haven't experienced it for whatever reason, because of so many divorces, so much problems. And this is, I think, where the evil behind the scenes and the devil tries to divide and distort, right? And even fornication is a big problem, with that, because fornication comes in, and what fornication does is it puts the cart before the horse, the sex before the love, and it kind of just boils it all down to lust and pleasure, sexual pleasure and lust, licentiousness, whatever you want to call it. And what happens is you miss out on the love. You don't get the love, right? And then a lot of people are just like, what's love? People don't even know what love is anymore, because they're so used to just fornicating or being rejected or being used or lied to, cheated. And so people are just so broken that they'll never, or at least they haven't up until now, experienced that family, right? But if you experience that family, and you're in that family, and you're around the family, and you're like, wow, this is why people had kids back in the day. This is why people were getting married, having a lot of children, because there was this love there, and you don't see it or know it until you experience it. And then once you do, you're like, oh wow, this is wonderful. You got these beautiful kids, these loving kids. You got a loving wife who is not materialistic, and she's not shallow or causing problems. She's just in pocket. She's in pocket. She's calm. And this is why the Bible is so, emphasizes the virtuous woman. And it's not that she has to be super virtuous per se. Like, if you go read Proverbs, I'm a Proverbs 31 woman. I do, I wake up before the crack of dawn. I'm making my family. Da, da, da. Yeah, it's not that you got to be that rigid. It's just that be a good person. Be a good mother, and be in pocket. And so many women today are taught and bred and brought up to not be in pocket and to be out of pocket. Oh, I'm a bad bee. I'm a queen. I'm a diva. All the horrible. That is It's not cancer. It's cancer. Cancer. Pardon me. Cancer isn't even a good enough description of that. It's just scorched earth. Like, you cannot have a family when you have a narcissist for a mother. You can't. And you can't have a family when you've got a messed up father, or a drug addict father, or a narcissist father, or a father who cheats. It goes both ways. It's all of it. And that's the beauty of a mutual, mutual love. In a family, is that you see the harmony there. And again, I think even the push for traditional masculine values to return, etc., is somewhat a problem, because a lot of guys think that they got to be this alpha guy, or think that they got to run the show. And what it does is it takes away as a man, it takes away your calmness, it takes away your confidence, it takes away your, how do I put it? It just makes you think that you've got to perform, like, I've got to be this alpha leader. Woo, woo, woo. No, that's not the right answer either. I think it's somewhere in the middle. Like, what it really is you just got to know what family values are, experience it, be around it somehow. And in our country, it's so divided. It's so and I believe it's a social engineering from evil entities. It's just, people a lot of times are so messed up that they get their quote-unquote family values from their drinking buddies down at the football game or something. And it's like, that's not healthy, man. That's not normal. You need to be around a big family, close-knit family, brothers, sisters, in-laws maybe, but that's what joy and love and traditional values are really about, is when you experience that. And you got to put God in there. You got to put God first, I think, my opinion. Like, I'm not on here preaching and telling people whatever, but I feel like if you don't put God first and you don't have God as your anchor and foundation, then you're liable for anything, because God is a safeguard. He's a cornerstone. He's a foundation. That's just how I feel. But even today even today we just don't see that anymore. We don't see. And I remember growing up, in the 80s and the 90s. I was born in the 80s, growing up and seeing it a little bit in the 90s. Even there used to be family values where like people would get together, have barbecues, have cookouts. I mean, you can still see it in some places in America, but I feel like somewhere along the line we lost that. Somewhere along the line we lost that. People used to go have cookouts, people used to have get-togethers, they'd have, little small parties or whatever, but they would just get together, potlucks, whatever you want to call them. They get together and they'd eat with family, and then they just enjoy each other. And we've lost that. What we have now is people who are enjoying the internet, enjoying sports games, it's instead of each other, it's this thing that we're worshiping together. I don't use the word worshiping, but we're doing this thing together, like and that's better than nothing, right? It's better, but I still think it's short, so in the Bible, God said it's not good for man to be alone, right? It's not good for man to be alone. And I think this is the reason why. Because when we're alone, we get in our head. When we're alone, we start to feel dejected. And I just don't think we're created that way. I don't think God created us to be alone. And when you're with people you love, and when you're around people that you care about, you change. Something within you comes out. This kind of joy, this kind of love. And you can only experience it when you're in that family, when you're in that group of people. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, I got my group of people, my gamer friends, or like I got my group of people, my sports ball friends, or I got my group of people, my theater friends, or whatever. That's not real family. I hate to say it. It's a substitution. It's a distortion. Distortion maybe is a little bit too strong of a word, but it's kind of a substitution, right? It's not the real thing. It's maybe close. Maybe you got some camaraderie. Maybe you got some kind of love a little bit there. Some outward kind of like I love my friends. I care about my friends. Okay, but it's really a counterfeit in a way. Like what you're really supposed to do is you're supposed to have a wife, and you're supposed to have kids, and then you get together with your wife and kids, and you enjoy family, and that's what you come home and you have that love, and that's what restores people. It's what it restores your stress from work. It restores your heart for humanity. It restores your hope and your love, because it's like if you really experience that type of love, you're like, wow, like I'm blessed, And so all that we talk about in the Red Pill is like, how do you avoid getting messed over by a woman and things like that, but a lot of times we don't talk about this. We don't talk about the sad part is that men are supposed to not be alone. Men are supposed to be with a family. Men are supposed to have a wife and kids. Men are supposed to have in-laws they get together with, and the joy there, and there's even growth there. Is there's safeguarding, there's strength there. You have a scenario where you've got uncles and aunts coming together, and they all kind of have their own little portion. They pitch in with their own little love and their own little this and their own little that, and you got kids, and the kids are looking up to the uncles and aunts, and there's communication there, and there's jovialness, and there's joking, and there's conversations and things like that, and there's growth, and there's care, and there's protection. That was what people understood 100 years ago, 150 years ago. They understood that. They understood that, hey, family, there used to be people, would say, well, family's all you got. Family's all you got, really. Because who's going to be there, when you're down and out? Who's going to have your back? Who's going to support you? Who loves you when no one else does? When the world doesn't love you, or whatever. Should be your family. And some people say, well, church. And some people say, well, other Christians and things like that. If you're a Christian, you kind of know what I'm talking about. And it can be, yes, but unfortunately, I think even then, people, I've heard even people say like, oh, the church family is our real family. And maybe spiritually, like, okay, spiritually, when it comes to your relationship with God, yeah, we have millions of brothers and sisters in Christ. That's true. I would agree with that. We're all brothers and sisters, but the problem is people don't realize they're brothers and sisters. There's a lot of strife. There's a lot of division. There's a lot of arguing, quarreling, things like that. And people don't feel like that. They don't think that way, like, oh, yeah, we're brothers and sisters. it's kind of perfunctory, like, oh, we just get together, go to church, and it is what it is, and then we go back to our homes or whatever, and it's kind of somewhat hollow. So I would say, even though maybe ideally that would be, yeah, we've got our church family, okay, I hope so, and I hope we get together and love each other and care for each other, really, but really, family, real family, real in-laws, real blood is one of the best things if you can see it, if you can make it happen, if you can experience it. And I know that, one thing is, not everybody's blessed with a good family. Some people are, some people aren't. I think it's rare. I think it's more rare these days, more and more rare. But if you got a good family, you have no idea how lucky you are. If you got parents who care for you, if you got family who cares for you, brothers and sisters who cares for you, then you have really no idea how lucky you are. So, at the end of the day, I would say, the red pill should be about the truth. It should be about, for equipping men, on what to avoid and things like that. But ultimately, I think that when it claims it has certain answers, like, oh, MGTOW, or guys should be alone, or even that crap that, like, Fresh and Fit puts out, like, oh, it's okay to have multiple women and sleep with like 35 women or something before you're age 25, or so, sleep with all these women. It's just horrible. The advice, some of the advice in the red pill manosphere. I understand that, the problem with the problem with the prospect of young men getting married, and that's why I think the Bible says, he who finds a good wife has obtained favor with the Lord. He who finds a good wife has found a good thing and found a blessing, because I don't think it's easy to find a good wife. And I think that's one of the main problems, and I think that's why red pill and MGTOW, etc., is so popular today, because it's so hard to find a good woman, unfortunately. So that's what we're up against. That's what we're faced with. But I think it takes a lot of prayer, and I think, and maybe some people just get lucky, I think, but yeah, man. Family values, man. You can't, or not family values. Family in general, just family is so underrated, and I think that I hope that if anything makes a comeback, I hope it's that. I hope family makes a comeback. I hope God makes a comeback too, and people really turn their hearts back to God, because really, when we're apart from God, this is how I feel. When we're apart from God, that's where it all starts going downhill, and the devil can come in, and he does come in, and because he's not he's a snake, and he's a shark, and he doesn't ask his way in. He coerces, and he tempts, and he's subtle, and he manipulates, and God's not like that. God is a gentleman. God waits, and God knocks on our door and hopes that we'll open. But Satan's the opposite. He tries to break in. He tries to, and that's why I think it's so important to put God first, is because God is a protection. When we put God first, we're protected against all that other stuff. Hopefully people would do that. But I'm again, that's just my opinion. I'm not on here preaching, but I think if I'm preaching anything, it's that family is so important for love, for men, and I think it's underrated to say that, men need that base, that family value. Men need that love. And I think, unfortunately, some people have never even experienced it. They've just had a bad environment for whatever reason. Their parents didn't have love, or there's a lack of love in life and things like that. That's why I say put God first, because he can restore love. He can show you what real love is. He can show you what real life is. I mean, inner life, you know what I mean? Not life in the esoteric way or the existential way, but life in the sense of a flow, from for instance, like a vine to some grapes. Like, the life force is in the flow. The life force is in the vines, right? Well, the Bible says, Jesus he says, I am the vine and you are the branches, right? So what does that mean? It means we have our life in God, our real life flow, our life force. And when you get detached from that, which is what I think so many people today are, they're detached from the life flow to God, or from God. They don't have life. They don't have spiritual life. They're just dead in the water. I remember I've used this analogy before. I grew up in Spokane, Washington, and when One time I went snorkeling, and I was flowing down this beautiful river, Spokane River. In fact, I was snorkeling down, and I would see these fish, and they just had these. We call them sucker fish. I think that's what they're called, sucker fish. I don't know the scientific term name for them, but they're called. We call them sucker fish. Because I think they look like another type of fish, and they're not. But anyway, um, I was floating down with these snorkels, and I see these fish, and they just had these dead, lifeless eyes. These dead, lifeless eyes, and I would look at these fish, and it was like they would look at me, and they just look right through me because they were just dead in their soul, I guess you could say. Because I think every being has a soul, unless it's I mean, trees are sentient, but we couldn't say they have a soul, even though trees are very interesting because they. Anyway, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but people have souls. I think animals have souls. People have human spirits. That's a whole different thing. But well, yeah, people have human spirits, and when your spirit is dead, the spirit should be connected to God. Yes, you have a soul, but the soul is lifeless because it's not animated by anything. It's not, it's in the same way that a light bulb, when it's not plugged in, is not attached to the electricity. If you're not plugged into God, you don't have that life force. You don't have that life flow. People are dead. They're dead in they have dead, lifeless eyes. They're dead in their hearts and their souls. Anyway, so if you could experience that, foundation and that life, then it's wonderful. But again, family is what it's all about. What is one of the first things that God said when He created mankind? He said it's not good for man to be alone, and then He created Eve. Right? This is the story, and you can believe it or not. But here we are, alone, men who are alone. Where's our Eve, right? Where's our family, And if you haven't, experienced that, then you don't know what you're missing. However you could do it. Some people grow up and they've got a friend who's got a really nice family. And they go over to their friend's house, and they're like, wow, these people really care about each other. This is a really nice family. I like being around here, because they treat me right, and they're nice, and we've got this nice family. And I could experience it that way, even though at home I don't have a nice family. My friends have a nice family, right? But there are people, unfortunately, who've never experienced it. They don't even know what that is. Like they're totally living for themselves. They totally don't care about other people. That's just how they're habitually living their life. And that's, I think, is like, it's like you're not even alive. You're a walking dead person, even though you're alive and you're functioning and you can talk, etc. If you don't have love, I think you're dead inside, And so I think love and family is hand in hand. They go hand in hand. So yeah, man, I'm gonna end it there, but I think that I just hope we would come back to these family values, because we lost that over time somehow. However it happened, whether it was through the television or the internet, or just leaving God, or all the divorce, all the reasons why, and what's behind all those things, what's behind all the negative things. It's the devil, because he doesn't like mankind. He hates mankind because mankind was created in God's image, and he wasn't, and he's this rebellious angel, and you can believe that story or not, but the point is there is evil out there. There's division, there's divorce, and all these things, and I believe it comes from a source. I believe there's a source of that, and I believe there's also a source of good. I believe there's a source of love. I believe there's a source of connection and union, and I think it's in God, and I think that a great expression and representative of that is the family unit, and I think that's why God did it that way, because the family unit represents the marriage union between God and man, which is what the whole Bible really is about from the very beginning. The whole reason God created mankind is because he was alone, because he was lonely, and you could say, well, how can God be lonely if God's God, or what? I don't know, but it is what it is, and that's what supposedly it's all about. So you believe it or not, but either way, family is quintessential. Whether or not you're a Christian or not, family is quintessential. And until you experience the family, and until you really feel that love, you don't really know what I'm talking about. And that's unfortunate, because if you haven't experienced that, you're totally missing out. Because and I come from a broken home, and I come from damage and things like that in my home. But we also had a little bit of love, and I experienced it. I've touched it. I've tasted it. It wasn't constant. It wasn't all the time. It was rare instances, but we had it. We would get together as a family, and we would go swimming, or we would do this, or we would go outside do that. It did happen, and there was love. It's just in my family, particularly, it was somewhat fragmented because we had a lot of problems, and then eventually, my parents separated, so technically it was a broken home. But it wasn't until my older siblings really graduated high school, so I was still in, I think, middle school is when that happened with me, or just about in middle school. Anyway, I experienced it up until that age, to some degree, right? Off and on, even though it was fragmented, they had problems, whatever, which is not uncommon today. Not uncommon for broken homes and things like that to happen, and marriages to dissipate, etc. Unfortunately, there's a big attack on that. I think people who stay together for a long time are very strong. I think that's something to be admired. We admire celebrities, we admire sports ball players, we admire actors and directors and writers and this and that, in our society. But what we don't admire, we should admire teachers of kids, teachers who teach kids. They should be admired. We should admire librarians. We should admire people who keep our streets clean. People who are actual direct service to the community. And we absolutely should uplift and admire our parents and families. This is why the Bible says honor your parents, honor your mother and father, because it's something that is quintessential to not only our survival, but just what it means to be human, what it means to be, alive as a human and love. And I think when you distort those things, when you distort humanity, when you distort love, and you distort particularly morals, and that's how it happens. It's through immorality, through lust, and all the seven deadly sins, whatever you want to say, but temptations and negative thinking and things like that come in, and addictions, etc. All these things come in to break up families. Infidelity, right? Arguments, strife, things, all these things, these are all like extensions of how the devil works to ruin humanity. And these things exist, so we can't sit here and be like, oh, that's all in your head, the devil's not real. Okay, then why do all these things exist? Why is there addiction? Why is there strife? Why is there divorce? Why is all these negative things? Like, what's the source of that? What's instigating that? Right? It comes from something. It comes from an argument, or it comes from a bad opinion, or it comes from a negative thought, or it comes from a depressive pattern of thinking. Where do those things come from? Right? There's got to be a source, right? So there's something that's active, and the Bible describes it, right? There's an active force that's causing people to atrophy, causing people to be divided, causing people to not be happy. And people don't even know. They just think, oh, I'm just depressed, or I'm this, or I'm that, and maybe many of them haven't even experienced genuine happiness. Maybe many of them haven't even experienced it because they're so used to being divided and so used to being dead spiritually. You got to experience it, and I would say pray, ask God to help. Even if you don't believe in God, if you're real, can you show me what this love is? Can you show me what this life is? Can you show me something else? Because I'm miserable. I just want to cry out to you because I don't have anything else, and my life is miserable, and I'm suicidal, and I'm this or that, or I feel bad about all these things that I'm going through, and I'm life's hitting me from every angle, and I feel like I'm a slave to money and slave to my bills and all these things. People, that's how people find God. Turn to God and see if He can change, see if He can open up something within you, maybe to feel better about things, and I believe only God can do that. From my experience in my life, I've pursued other things. Popularity doesn't do it. Friendship doesn't really do it. Everything's hollow. Everything's shallow. Everything is kind of a vapor of what it really should be until you really get into God. And then what you do, and then you can experience family and things like that, and you can experience these things that God made. I mean, that's why. For thousands of years, there was no TV, there was no sports balls. There was a little bit, but in bigger cultures. But mostly, what people had is they had their family, whether they were hunter-gatherers, or whether they were agrarian, or whether they were shepherds or whatever, or whether they lived in a village. People had the cornerstone of people's lives was family. If you had a good family, you were super blessed, and that's why people had so many kids. Probably, I believe that's a part of it. It's why people had so many kids. Yes, it's so they could. Kids were wealth. I understand that. Kids help them financially, etc. But I think also family is not only protection, but it's love and it's joy, and it's supposed to supply you with a lot of the things that we are being. What's the word? These things are counterfeits. These things are counterfeits for the real thing, whether it's entertainment or movies or music or this or that. They're counterfeits for the real love and the real joy that you find in family, and that I think ultimately you find in God. So hopefully we all can experience that. Hopefully we understand that. And I understand that the red pill, etc., is it's a reaction to feminism. But what is feminism? Feminism is an attack on that. It's an attack on family. It's an attack on the love between the mother and the father by casting doubt into the female mind, the young woman's mind, until she gets jaded and distorted and messed up in her thinking, and then she becomes promiscuous and ruins her purity and her sanctity, and then men can go be promiscuous and ruin their sanctity and purity, and it goes both ways. But even though obviously it's easier for a woman to be that way, but the average man doesn't have access to that. But the point is that feminism is what's it's a divisive tool, and this is how the devil works. He starts out good, like, oh, this is this good thing, like, oh, it's this new political thing that's going to answer to crony capitalism, or it's this new social ideology that's going to answer to this boogeyman patriarchy. It's this new thing that's going to fix this thing. That's how it always works, right? The new government's going to be better than the old government. Then the new this, the new that. And it sounds good at first until it becomes corrupted, until it becomes this, until it becomes distorted. And what we should have done on second wave feminism was like, hey, wait a minute. Yeah, we agree with basic objective equality, sure, but and civil rights and that. But where we messed up is all this other stuff. Now we're attacking masculinity. Hold on, wait a minute. Now we're attacking the family unit. Hold on, wait a minute. Now we're attacking morals. Hold on, wait a minute, right? And so this is where second and third wave feminism came in, and just we saw the distortion from the original equality. But so to counter that, is it that we need to walk away, or is it we need to return to some kind of love, love and values? If you really see a wonderful family who have a nice home, in a quaint little street, you'll understand, whoa, that's what life is really about. It's not about getting rich. It's not about, having all my desires fulfilled, having this great car, having all this wonderful life. It's about, not about being wealthy and, I got all my dreams came true. No, it's just about something simple. Love, family, kids. It seems simple, it seems boring, but it's so fulfilling, right? It's so fulfilling. And I hope that we would all find that before it's too late. I hope we would all find that before things get worse. And I think that if anything's going to counter the current, if anything's going to counterbalance the current, counteract the current, the downward trends that we see in today's society, it's that. It's, hey, I'm going to get out of this pit of immorality, out of this pit of selfishness and narcissism and greed and seeking after mammon and self-gain and all this crap that the world's flowing down the tube in, right? I'm gonna get out of that, and I'm gonna just find love, and I'm gonna have a family. I'm gonna be simple, and it's not gonna be one of these new age families, anyway. I don't need get into that. That's a whole other story. But that's why you got to find a good woman. Again, that's why you got to have those values. And I wouldn't even say, the man needs to be the leader, neither of that. I don't need a female strong leader. I need a male strong leader. I just need a unit. I need people working together, loving each other in harmony, hopefully putting God first, and family values and love and things like that. And that's what it's all about. It used to be like that. I remember it was like that in the 80s and the 90s. We still had that, but you're seeing the tail end of a lot of how good it was up until then, I think in a lot of ways. Of course, yeah, it's bad. It's always been bad in some ways and some angles, whatever. But at some point, people are just like, oh, everything became not compartmentalized. What's the word? Everything became productized. Everything became a product. Even family, even friendship became a product. It's what is this doing for me? How is this? And people became shrewd, and people. It's just when you know. When you see those family values, you see it, and you're like, wow. People used to go outside. People used to have barbecues. People used to enjoy each other's company. It used to be more of like a community as opposed to like a society, right? There's a lot there. There's a lot more, but I'm going to end it there. I hope you guys understand the gist that I'm saying. I appreciate you listening to the Jay Lee Northwest Podcast. Peace.